I was folding my son's laundry when the call came. My sister Harper didn't bother with a hello. "You're watching Mia tonight," she said flatly, as if my life revolved around her toddler. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Harper, I can't. I have a night shift at the diner. You'll have to figure something else out." There was silence, followed by a sharp inhale and a venomous laugh. "You think you get to say no to me? Watch what happens when I tell Dad." She hung up before I could respond. I brushed it off at first. Harper had always been dramatic. Our parents fed her ego since we were kids. If she wanted the moon, they'd build a ladder for her. Me? I was the cautionary tale, the mistake, the don't end up like her warning they whispered at family barbecues. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. By the time I got home that night, though, the air felt wrong. Dad was sitting in his recliner, still in his work boots, gripping a half-empty beer like it owed him money. Mom perched on the armrest, nails tapping the bottle like she was counting down to something, and Harper stood behind them, arms crossed, smirking like a cat watching a cornered mouse. "You ignoring family now, Reagan?" Dad's voice was low, deliberate, too calm. I dropped my bag near the door and shook my head slowly. I wasn't ignoring anyone. I just couldn't babysit. I had work. Dad's laugh was dry, hollow. Work? For what? That pathetic little paycheck? You think anyone in this family needs your crumbs? Mom chimed in without missing a beat, her voice dripping sugar and venom. "Your sister is exhausted. She's raising a child. She needs help. And what do? Hide behind an apron at some greasy diner. Pathetic." I clenched my fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. "I'm doing my best. I'm taking care of my son, working double shifts, trying to—" "You don't get to talk back to me." Dad cut me off, rising from his chair. His boots thudded against the floor, each step heavier than the last. "In this house, Harper's needs come first. Always. And what about my needs?" The words flew out before I could stop them. My voice cracked, anger and exhaustion colliding in my chest. "What about my son? What about the fact that I'm killing myself trying to give him a better life while you hand Harper everything?" That's when Harper whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's just jealous. Always has been." Something inside me snapped. "Jealous? Of what? Living like a parasite, depending on everyone else while you treat me like dirt? No, Harper. I'm not jealous. I'm done being your free nanny." The room went still for a heartbeat. Dad's jaw twitched. His grip tightened on the beer bottle until his knuckles went white. And then, without warning, he grabbed the nearest thing, the dining chair, and swung it. The crack of wood against bone was deafening. Pain exploded across my jaw, white-hot and blinding. I hit the floor hard, my palms scraping against the carpet. My ears rang, my vision blurred. Somewhere through the haze, I heard Mom's voice, sharp and cold as glass. "That's what happens when pigs forget their place." Blood pooled in my mouth. I tried to speak, but the words came out garbled, broken. Harper laughed. "She looks ridiculous. Look at her. Who's jealous now?" I crawled toward the wall, pushing myself upright, my entire body trembling. My heart pounded in my chest, not from fear but from something darker, heavier, something that burned slow and deep. I stared at all three of them, tasting blood and betrayal. "You'll regret this." My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, but they heard me. Dad sneered, towering over me. "You don't scare me, Reagan. You'll do as you're told or you won't survive in this family. That's not a threat. That's a promise." I looked at Harper, at her smug little smirk, and then at Mom, who was wiping her hands like she'd just finished cleaning something dirty. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. That night, while my jaw throbbed and my body ached, I sat on the bathroom floor holding a bag of frozen peas to my swollen face. My reflection in the mirror was almost unrecognizable, a stranger staring back at me with hollow eyes and clenched teeth. They thought they'd broken me. But as I sat there, bleeding and silent, I began to plan. Not for a revenge that comes quick and loud. for something patient, precise, poetic. Something that would make them wish they'd never laid a hand on me. ChatGPT said, blood still crusted at the corner of my lips when morning sunlight crept through the blinds, stabbing into my swollen eyes. My jaw ached so badly that I could barely breathe without feeling it, but the pain wasn't what kept me awake all night. It was their laughter. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it echoing Harper's smug giggle, Dad's dry bark, Mom's soft, venomous chuckle as she called me a pig. That sound burrowed beneath my skin until I could feel it in my bones. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. Instead, I listened. I lay on the cold bathroom floor, replaying every insult, every betrayal, every moment I'd been shoved aside for Harper since the day I could walk. Birthdays forgotten, dreams dismissed, sacrifices demanded, and the endless parade of "you're less than." That night, something inside me hardened into steel. When I finally stepped into the kitchen the next morning, the smell of burned bacon hit me first. Harper was at the table, scrolling through her phone like she owned the house, while Mom hummed over the stove. Dad leaned against the counter, holding another beer before breakfast. He didn't look up when he spoke. "You're babysitting Mia today. No excuses." My jaw throbbed as I forced a flat tone. "No." Harper's head snapped up. "What did you just say?" "I said no." Dad slammed his bottle down so hard, beer splashed across the counter. "You don't get to tell me no in my house, Reagan." I met his eyes for the first time in years and held his gaze. "Then maybe it shouldn't be your house anymore." For a second, silence filled the room. Harper scoffed. Mom turned, spatula in hand, lips curling into that cruel smile she wore like perfume. "You think you can threaten us?" she hissed. "You're a waitress living paycheck to paycheck. You can barely feed your own kid. You're nothing without this family." I tilted my head slowly, ignoring the pain it caused. "Funny," I whispered, "because this family treats me like I'm already nothing." Harper laughed high and sharp. "Oh my God, are you finally losing it? This is cute. What are you gonna do, Reagan? Run away again? Cry to your broke friends? Nobody wants you, not even your ex. That's why he left." The words were meant to sting. They didn't. Not anymore. I walked past them, slow and deliberate, feeling their eyes follow me as I picked up my bag and slung it over my shoulder. "Where are you going?" Dad barked. I didn't turn around. "To work," I said evenly. "To earn money. Something you wouldn't understand." Behind me, Mom muttered, "Ungrateful little rat." But I kept walking. At the diner, I plastered on a smile for the customers, but inside, I was quiet and cold. Every clink of a coffee cup, every hiss of the fryer, every fake laugh I gave to a regular, all of it blurred behind the raging storm in my head. By the end of my shift, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't about a single chair smashed into my jaw. It wasn't even about babysitting Mia. It was about decades of being invisible in my own family and how invisibility could be my greatest weapon. I started small, subtle, harmless. I stopped answering Harper's calls when she wanted favors. I stopped picking up groceries Mom texted me for on my way home. I stopped giving Dad rides to the bar when his truck broke down. At first, they didn't notice. Then, slowly, they did. The first crack came when Harper showed up at my apartment unannounced, Mia wailing on her hip, demanding I take her for the weekend. I leaned against the doorframe and smiled. "I told you, Harper, I'm done babysitting." "You don't get to be done," she shrieked, drawing the attention of neighbors in the hall. "You owe us. Everything you have comes from this family." I leaned closer until my lips were inches from her ear and whispered, "Not for long." She blinked, confusion flashing in her eyes before anger replaced it. "You're losing it," she spat, but her voice trembled as she stomped down the hall. 2 weeks later, the atmosphere at my parents' house had shifted. It was tense, sharp, like standing under a sky ready to split open with thunder. Dad avoided my eyes now. Harper had stopped calling. Mom sent guilt-laden texts about family unity that I deleted without reading. They didn't know it yet, but I'd already found the one thing they couldn't afford to lose. The house. The property they worshipped like a shrine, the very ground Dad called our legacy. The title wasn't in his name, it was in mine. They'd put me down my entire life, but years ago, when Dad hit a financial wall, he'd convinced me to sign as co-owner to secure a loan. He thought I'd never notice, never understand. But I did. I'd kept quiet, watched, waited. Now, all I had to do was move the final pieces into place. I looked at the paper spread across my kitchen table that night. Contracts, copies, forms I'd had notarized during my breaks at the diner. My hands didn't shake. For the first time, I wasn't scared of them. For the first time, they should have been scared of me. I waited until the day of Harper's big family brunch, the one where she'd invited half the neighborhood, her boss, and every so-called important person she could find to show off their perfect, picture-ready life. The sun was merciless that Sunday morning, but I felt nothing. My jaw still clicked when I chewed, a permanent reminder of the chair Dad slammed into me, but I didn't wear that pain like a wound anymore. I wore it like armor. When I arrived, Harper was on the porch in a satin dress, holding Mia on her hip, posing for photos as Mom hovered behind her, rearranging plates of pastries like it was a royal coronation. Dad was already half drunk, laughing loudly near the grill. The moment Harper spotted me, her face twisted. "Oh, wow," she sneered. "You showed up. Didn't think we'd see you here after your little meltdown." Dad barked out a laugh, beer sloshing over his fingers. "Look who finally remembered where she came from." I smiled slowly, letting silence hang between us. "Trust me," I said softly. "I remember exactly where I came from." Before Harper could fire back, a sleek black sedan rolled up the driveway and stopped by the front steps. Out stepped Mr. Holloway, the developer Dad had been bragging about for years, the man he'd promised would make this family rich by buying part of our property. Only this time he wasn't here for Dad. He was here for me. "Miss Reagan," Holloway said warmly, shaking my hand in front of the entire gathering. "Everything's finalized. As of today, the property has officially transferred under your name alone. Congratulations." You could have heard a pin drop. Dad's face went from smug to ghostly pale in a heartbeat. "What?" he stammered, stepping forward. "That's impossible. That's my land." I turned to him, holding the signed papers out casually, like a dagger disguised as an olive branch. "Not anymore." Harper's jaw dropped. Mom's hand froze mid-air, a pastry crumbling between her fingers. You can't do this," Dad roared. "We built this house with our bare hands." "And you tried to break me with yours," I said coldly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before smashing my jaw." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat politely, but I wasn't finished. I raised my voice, just loud enough for every guest to hear. "For years, you treated me like trash while you worshipped Harper. You called me useless, worthless, a pig. And now," I held up the title deed, my voice steady as stone, "now this worthless pig owns every inch of the ground you're standing on." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom was the first to recover, stepping forward with a trembling smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Reagan, sweetheart, we're family. We can work this out." I tilted my head slowly. Family? That word means something different to me now. I turned deliberately toward Harper, who looked ready to combust. "Oh, by the way," I added lightly, "since the house is mine, I'll need everyone out by the end of the month." The color drained from her face. You can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go?" "Maybe you can ask one of your important guests," I said with a shrug, glancing at the neighbors and Harper's boss, who were now whispering behind their hands, scandalized. Dad lunged toward me, but Holloway stepped in between us, calm and firm. "Touch her, and I'll have you arrested on the spot. She's the legal owner now." That broke him. For the first time in my life, my father, the man who screamed, hit, and commanded, looked small, powerless. I didn't stay for the rest of their brunch. By the time I reached my car, I heard voices rising behind me. Harper crying, Mom begging, Dad shouting threats he no longer had the power to enforce. The weight of their control had evaporated like smoke. But that wasn't the real revenge. 2 weeks later, I drove past the house one last time. The curtains were gone. The yard was overgrown. A for rent sign stood proudly at the edge of the driveway. I'd leased it to strangers. People who didn't know my family. People who didn't care about their legacy. People who'd make them walk past the house they thought they'd rule forever every single day and know it wasn't theirs anymore. That was my revenge, not screaming, not fighting, not destroying them with violence. I erased them from their own kingdom. And as I walked away, I finally understood something. Sometimes the sharpest knife isn't anger. It's silence. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.